My grandfather has always been into knickknacks and outdated trinkets. At least they seemed that way to me. For him, they were small windows into a past that most of my generation have forgotten. He'd take me out to all manner of car boot sales, antique shops, and secondhand stores on the odd weekends my parents would drop me off at his place. In my youth, I hated it. But as time has worn me down and those trips slowly faded, it was the only way I could reconnect with the memory of him. Though I have a fondness for the objects that would have caught his eye, old toys and such, my search had always been for books. Using them as a way to pass the time initially. Soon they became the object of my meticulous scouring, developing that drive to write my own. He always told me that those broken, worn, and altogether unloved pieces would have undoubtedly bore witness to decades of their owners' lives. With a little bit of elbow grease, as he put it, they could be revitalized, being useful once again. I really like that sentiment, though the novels seem to speak to me on a different level. Windows into the mind of authors only remembered through their names. It gave me some semblance of satisfaction that I could be transported to whatever world they scribed, seeing it through their eyes. On that early Sunday morning, I'd already got my hands on 2 novels, eagerly raring to return home and bathe in the summer glow as I indulged in their dusty pages. However, something within, maybe my grandfather's words, pushed me to at least walk the full circuit, just in case. Reaching the end of the line, my eyes fell on a small, worn metal wind-up car. It looked fairly similar to those in my office, as I never had the heart to throw away any of the things he left me. Palming it, satisfied that those feelings had been put at ease, another item practically jumped out at me. Laying beside the sun-damaged red tub, which contained the mishmash selection of toy cars, was a dark brown leather-bound book. Entranced by the well-aged tome, I flipped it over, reading the indented title that had been meticulously carved into the slightly damp cover. A life story. That's how the hook slid into me. Smooth, harmless, almost sweet. The cover smelled like bilge water and old sweet tea, the kind you forget on a porch rail until a fly drowns in it. The leather was clammy, sick with someone else's weather. I rubbed a corner with my thumb, and a thin curl of grime rolled up like a dead centipede. I should have put it back. I should have laughed about the melodramatic title and bought a cheap crime paperback with a sun-faded spine. But the roughness of the tooling under my finger felt like a pulse. I thought of my grandfather's hands, cracked and oil-stained, turning some stubborn relic over until it yielded. I did the same, paid out of the tub, the heavy-set woman barely looking. Coins clacked in the plastic, a cheap sound that didn't fit that heavy little brick. I carried it home under my arm like a secret. I'll keep this tight at first, because the beginning has a way of making me ramble. The book opened with the hiss of an old jar. The paper was yellowed, but thick, like something that had soaked up years of humid breath. The writing was tiny, set deep as if each letter had been pressed hard enough to bruise. And the first line knocked the wind out of me. My full name. Then, my birth, time and minute, the winter night, the hospital that closed down when I was 10, the nurse with a gap in her teeth who always hummed Moon River, a detail my mother told me drunkenly once. The curtains in the first flat, the foamy green carpet my father swore had already been there. The book set the room's temperature. It cupped my scalp and pushed my head down into smells I'd only half remembered. Ammonia and baby lotion and the cold metal of a cot that squealed when you shifted it. I stopped reading a lot that first hour. Not because I didn't want to, because the sentences reached into my body and pulled strings I didn't know were still attached. The language wasn't flowery. It didn't announce itself like a writer showing off. It just said things I knew were true in the rhythm of someone breathing beside me. A steadying in, a precise out like counting. I put the book down. Then I picked it up. Then I put it down again because my hands were shaking stupidly and I didn't want to tear the page. I kept thinking about a trick, a data scrape, some scummy app that had hoovered my social media and my mother's bad privacy settings. But then the book mentioned the cracked, goose pattern lamp from my grandmother's spare room and the way the bulb buzzed when you switched it on, and a thick heat came up the back of my neck that had nothing logical in it. Memory heat. Shame heat. If I'm being honest. I called Libby. Tell me if I'm losing it, I said, dropping it on the coffee table between us like evidence. Libby's good at knives that aren't knives. She's the one who edits my drafts and says, cut this fat, keep this bone. She flips the pages on me. She cuts my pity. She frowned. Then she frowned harder. Her mouth went thin, then slack. She looked up. Her eyes were the wrong kind of wide. Not astonished, cornered. How in the world does someone know that much about me? She said. No, I said, stupidly certain. That's me. We both grabbed it. We both read aloud like kids racing, tripping each other. At some point we laughed, but it wasn't a nice laugh. It was a laugh because the room had filled up with something we didn't have a word for, and we didn't want to call it what it was. We argued without raising our voices. That's how you know it was serious. We took turns reading the same lines, and each time the pronouns slid toward the mouth that spoke them, as if the book had a bead that kept rolling to whichever side was lower. Libby left first. She stood in my hall, pulling at the sleeve of her jumper, making the cuff long, hiding her hand in it. A kid habit. Don't keep it, she said. Or at least don't be you about it. Be me. You know exactly what I mean. She did, and she wasn't wrong. I walked her to the door like a sleepwalker and stood there half an hour after it shut, just seeing the wood and feeling the book sitting in the next room like a breathing animal. I could make this more respectable by telling you I slept on it, that I wrestled with whether to keep reading, that I thought about my deadlines and the stack of laundry and my heart health. I didn't. I folded. The book opened in my lap with a weight that made my thighs go numb, and I read until the sky outside my windows turned the color of a bruise that's begun to heal. It's easy to call what came next addiction. The word is neat. It makes a shape you can hold. But addiction is also a geometry of small, stupid choices. It's turning a page instead of standing up. It's ignoring a hunger you can fix to feed when you can't. It's knowing you'll pay for it, and paying anyway because your body is a spoiled animal and you like how it kicks. The book didn't always flatter me. That's important to say. It told the cafeteria spill with the mean clarity of a camera you can't look away from. It put me on the shiny tiles and described how the sauce burned my forearm and the burst grapes of embarrassment under my ribs when the table of older kids clapped. It described the smell of the tray, sour milk, and fried fat. It didn't give me a speech where I triumphed. It didn't point to the moment and say, "This made you." It just held me under and didn't let me pretend it had been less. The nice memories were easy heroin. Blackberry juice on my fingers from my grandmother's garden, the way the thorns set tiny, dull hooks into the pad of a thumb, and how I still have a puncture scar if I squint. The radio fuzz, the ticking clock, the parking of bees in the lavender, the blue enamel bowl that made the berries look like bruised moons. My grandfather's breath honeyed with tea and pipe tobacco as he said, "Fill it to the line, soldier." The book moved like that from slap to bomb. I followed. I kept following. Days went as quiet as a house after a fight. I propped up cushions with the laziness you develop when you know you won't be moving again for a long time. My stomach made the hollow bottle sound hungry bodies make, and I ignored it. I forgot to shower for a stretch, and then forgot that I'd forgotten, which is worse. When my phone died, I didn't plug it in because the charger was in the bedroom, and the bedroom might as well have been France. Knocks came. I let them be part of the weather. A letter skinned the carpet with a papery whisper. The hallway breathed old dust. Someone upstairs did laundry, and the hot iron smell sank through the ceiling. Voices through the door said my name once like a question and once like a complaint. I didn't answer either. I turned the page. Sleep came like a tackle, sudden and filthy. I woke with drool dried at the corner of my mouth and a page cling printed to my cheek. The book didn't punish me for it. It stayed open like a patient thing. It didn't nag. It didn't ask for anything except that I keep going. I kept going. I hit the pages where the book started describing the room I was in, the exact angle of the couch arm torn where I snagged it on my belt buckle last winter, the dead plant leaning toward the window as if listening to the street. It described my socks, which were mismatched, and mentioned the hole in the toe I'd been ripping bigger with my other foot because I like how fabric gives up. It described my throat raw. It described the taste of iron in my mouth that meant I'd cracked a lip in the dry indoor heat. It described the book describing the room. It described the book in my hands and the weight of it pressed hard to my thigh. I got to the sentence that started, "The next thing he hears is," and the wood of my back did a little groan, like a rib giving. Then the door didn't explode exactly. It became splinters with a loudness that flattened thought. Something hit the bridge of my nose, a rock chip of oak, and my eyes ran. Hands grabbed me like the old game you play with a kid where you pretend to snatch their nose, except cruel and real. The book went away. My hands felt the air where it had been and came up with nothing like losing a tooth in a fall. Big arms circled me in the blue uniform cloth of authority and heat, and I had the stupid, soul-deep urge to tell them they were being rude. Later, I learned it was a wellness check turned forced entry. The cops didn't say much beyond my name. The paramedics did. They said water. They said blink for me. They said, "I'm going to touch your wrist now." They said, "You don't have to talk." The paramedics' hands were cold and smelled like that powdery glove rubber that never fully leaves your skin. When they buckled me, I made a noise I've only ever made when I've been grabbed in a way I didn't consent to. A sound like the inside of a throat clearing itself with claws. "Where is it?" I said, and it came out like I'd been asleep for days, a cave sound, a mud sound. "Where is what?" The paramedic said, exactly like she'd say, "Where does it hurt?" I could have said my book. I said, "Don't let her read it." I don't know if I meant Libby or the world. Hospitals flatten you. They shave you down to wet facts. Pulse. Temp. The beep that makes a room feel like it's thinking about you. My bed was near the window, and the air whistled. The curtain knocked softly against its track. There was a man in the next bed with the quiet of someone with a serious diagnosis. His breath sawed evenly. Slow. He smelled like hot paper and plastic. I tried to rebuild the book in my head from the last sentence I'd seen. It was like trying to hum back a song you only half caught on a radio before it tunnellated. All I could hear was the rhythm. They asked me for names. I gave them my emergency contact and realized midway through spelling the number that it was Libby and she was going to see me with this big, stupid wristband and the bruise-a-cuff leaves. I felt ashamed. It wasn't a moral shame. It was small and animal. I'd been seen messing up. Libby came anyway. Of course she did. She had that drawn paper-thin look of someone mid-crash, like a tide going out too far. Her hair was scraped back, the kind of ponytail that isn't a style, it's a truce. She stood at the rail, didn't touch it, didn't touch me. Her eyes skipped like stones in someone else's hand. "They took it," I said. "It writes," she said. "No hello. No hey. It writes me. It writes how I can't stand the sound of those plastic rings in a binder when you close them and how I don't buy grapes because I hate how the little stems look like hands." She blinked. Hard. "It writes that my dad's voice goes tight when he's lying." "I know," I said. The words felt absurd, like telling someone drowning that water is wet. She looked at me something like angry and something like begging. "Is it the same book? Is it? Do you think it's a book that's always been here? Or does it?" Her mouth trembled. I could see the muscles in it trying to behave. "Do you think the book follows people who'll read it? Like a stray that knows who'll feed it?" I don't remember saying, "We should find the woman again." Maybe I didn't say it. Maybe I just picture the plastic tub, the woman's tired hand, the way she'd wave me off. Maybe both of us thought the same wrong thought at the same time and nodded because arrangements have to be made. Hospital days dripped. They warmed me like something thawed in a bowl on a counter. The nurse with the dragonfly pin smelled like mint and spoke in a voice meant for a room at night. The food was the same wet beige every day. The TV mouthed muted tragedies. When they signed me out, I was lighter in a way that wasn't wholesome. A hollow that wind could go through. My door was a plank of plywood now, with a municipal sticker that said somebody had fixed a problem. My flat smelled like the inside of an envelope, stale glue and paper. The couch had a sprayed sheen from the dust that rose when the door went. The book wasn't there. Of course it wasn't. I went through motions anyway. The polite ritual of checking where you know it won't be. Under cushions, behind books, on the table were a square of clean wood marked where it had sat like a suntan. There was a letter from the police about property. I held it and felt the smallness of myself move under my skin like something trying to get out. Libby didn't text. Her phone did the dead hollow ring when I called. Her apartment was 3 floors up in a building that always smelled like boiled cabbage and fried onions, no matter what the time. Door unlocked. Not like her. Her flat had that abandoned classroom feel. The air stirred when I walked and settled, a tiny soft sigh. I stood in the doorway and saw the walls and wanted to unsee them. Paper, every surface. The walls were written on in big loops of marker and in the looping smallness of pencil. The window glass had words traced in finger grease. The fridge had letters and magnets that made phrases like, "Who is writing and why does it know?" and "Don't eat the grapes." On the coffee table, glued open by spilled tea, was one of those black composition books they sell for 50 pence. The first line was a life story, but the handwriting was Libby's. She was in the corner chair, legs tucked, jumper sleeves long like when she'd left my place. Her face had the red blotches of someone who has been crying until the blood gives up. When she lifted her head, I saw the ring of tired around her eyes like bruises from goggles. She smiled at me like someone looks at a medic who is also a friend. Not happily, gratefully maybe, or helplessly. "I think it can hear me," she said. "Lib, no, listen. When I think about a thing before I read it, the book," she made a harsh sound with her teeth. "It meets me there." She tapped her chest with the side of her fist, like it moves to where I'm standing and looks out for me. I didn't tell her about the pages that had described my couch rip. I didn't have to. She was talking fast, slamming words with the urgency of someone who knows if they stop, they'll shatter. "I try to write over it," she said, waving at the walls. "I try to drown out with my own words. But the book keeps," she swallowed, and the swallow looked like it hurt. "It keeps being more true than me." She showed me a page where the margin notes were so dense they were a black shading, like a pupil blown wide. The text in the center was calm, thin-spined, patient. It said the kind of little thing you can't fake, the exact number of steps between her bed and the bathroom if you start with your left. It said the tick a cheap wall clock makes when the battery's running down, that tiny clunk where there should be a clean click. It said the small shame of not washing a bowl because there's a single oat welded to it, and you'd rather throw the bowl away than pick that oat off. It set the bowl on the counter and left it there. It saw her. It saw me seeing her. I could feel it turning its head. A person in a story like this should be smarter than what I did next. I should have taken her hand and led her out, and we should have walked until the air scraped our throats, and we'd find one of those parks with the big metal swings that you can lean into like confessionals. I should have talked. I should have called someone older than me. I should have called my mother. Instead, I said, "Let's find the woman from the market." The market was on every Sunday, rain or cold, sunshine bleaching everything into a lie. We went on a Wednesday, because of course we did. When you're wound tight, you think other people's routines will yield to your emergency. The place was a broad concrete field with paint flaking up like scabs. Empty, clean in the way that means abandoned. We stood there like kids who've snuck into school at night and realized there's nothing to do but be scared. We came back Sunday. The world was neon with chatter and grudge. Grease smoke pinned to the low air. The toy tub lady was there, her chair sunk to the hips in cheap plastic. She looked like a person who'd scraped 20 years out of a life meant to give her 10 less. I walked right up. I didn't say hello. "The book," I said. It sounded stupid on my tongue. "The brown one. Leather." She looked at me like she'd been waiting to see if I'd come back. There was a tiredness in it that was not unkind. She touched the tub with the backs of her fingers like reassuring a pet. "People ask about all sorts," she said. Her voice had that smoke-bent rattle that says she was a kid once and a girl who smiled at someone once, and now she's here. "You'll have to be a bit more specific." It was titled A Life Story, Libby said. Her voice was brittle, a crisp packet crushed. She wasn't good at playing nice when she was scared. The woman's eyes slid sideways. Well, that's original, she said, almost smiling. I wanted to reach across the table and take her hand and press it and ask like a person. Instead, I said, "Listen, please. I need to know where it came from. You don't understand what it is." "Sure I do," she said. "It's a book." She scratched a place on her arm in a way that told me it hurt her, and she was doing it anyway. Man who brought that box in said it was cleared from a house. Probate. I don't take IDs. I don't ask mostly. Keeps it cleaner. She looked at me. You can hand something over without knowing what it is. That's how I get through. Do you remember the address? Libby said, soft suddenly. The estate? A name? The woman sighed. She had the sort of sigh that you don't forgive in anyone else and you recognize immediately in yourself. She dug a damp ledger from under the table and licked a finger and turned pages and finally jabbed a line with her nail. 3 streets over from the gasworks. End terrace. Had a cat smell. I wanted to hug her. I didn't. I put a note under the ledger and she did not look at it until we had walked away. Some bargains feel holy. Some feel like you have dirt in your mouth. The house had the face of something that had lost an argument with time and was pretending it meant to. Boarded window. Paint coming off in curls you could peel, which I did because I'm that kind of idiot. The air at the door tasted like a loft. Mice paper, old bread. There was mail tucked under the mat with different names. A neighbor leaned out of their window and watched us in the way people do when they're trying to decide whether to be a witness. We got in because the lock was tired and the door had been shouldered too often. Inside, a thin hallway with a runner rug that had a stripe worn dead in the middle. The air hummed angry with the electricity they hadn't cut in time. The walls were hung with pictures and, more unervingly, with patches where pictures had been and weren't now. That rectangle clean of smoke and dust. A life in negative. In the living room was a couch with the permanent ass shape of someone who'd spent a life there. A TV with a thin black line across the top where the picture had burned out. And books. Not cute shelf books. Piles. Stacks under stacks. A library made by hoarding rather than gathering. The sort of books that look like they sweat in the night. We split wordlessly, a police procedural gesture, and started the work. My hands knew it. I've hunted through charity shop paperbacks for a missing edition. I've dug under stacks in church fates for the one cover with the good misprint. I moved carefully. I picked up and put down. I didn't look at titles. I felt. That's the only way I can say it that won't make me sound like I've started sniffing glue. I felt for something my skin remembered. When I found it, I knew before I saw it. A knot of dread tightened low in my belly like a pulled drawstring. The book hid badly, half under the couch, as if even the house didn't want it. The leather was the same wrong warmth. The embossing under my thumb had that same small stutter of depth that the other did. The title again, A Life Story. Libby made a noise that was almost a laugh and not at all happy. "We should burn it," she said. Her voice made the word sound like a door slamming in an empty church. "We should read it," I said. I hated my voice as soon as I heard it. It was both greedy and pleading, a junkie rationalizing in a way that makes you want to throw up. "We should burn it," she said again, softer this time, which is how you know she wasn't going to. We carried it to my flat because I couldn't bear to be in that house one breath longer, and because my flat already felt compromised, as if the book had left a shape there that only it could fill. We put on the table. Neither of us sat down. We stood like we were about to be told whether a scan showed something terminal. The book opened. It did not crack. It did not emit gas or whisper a Latin word. It just let go, the slow, confident letting go of a thing that knows you will catch it. The first line was not my name this time. The first line was, he would try to be good. I didn't know it meant me until I did. Libby put her hand down on the page like she was stopping it from flying away. The hair on my arms stood up so fast and hard that it hurt. We read together. We took turns because that made it feel like we were being fair, which was a joke because the book wasn't fair. It was a mirror, and mirrors aren't fair. They just show you your face when you've just cried and you didn't know you were going to see it. The book told the same story I've told you. It told it tighter, worse. It remembered small wrongs I'd let myself misremember as rights. It remembered the exact words I'd used to hurt someone in an argument and the half second afterward where I felt a mean glow, a tiny self-applause before the shame. It remembered Libby's goodbye last year when she said she needed, quote, to put down our weird codependency for a second, unquote, and then came back because friends always come back until one day they don't. It wrote it all without italics. It wrote the officers' knuckles and the smell of rain off their jackets and the way my neighbor pretended he hadn't been watching, which he had. That it did the thing the other had done. It described the room, the book, us, our breathing, the gnat that had blundered in and was now dying against the window screen with a tiny papery sound. And then it went further. It hedged forward a slow beak peck, peck, peck. It wrote, he thinks of reading ahead. He thinks he can bear it. He thinks he cannot bear it. He thinks. Libby slammed it shut. The sound was like a gunshot in that small room. We both flinched like cowards. I noticed I'd been digging my thumbnail into my palm so deep I'd made a crescent that filled with bright blood. I can't, she said. She was shaking so hard her teeth clicked. I'm not built for that. I'm not built to watch my own mouth before I've said the words. She shook her head. That's you. That's your disease. Hey, I said, meaning, don't be cruel, and knowing she wasn't wrong. I need to leave, she said. I need to go somewhere with no paper. I need to go somewhere that sounds like nothing I've ever heard, so the book can't match the rhythm. I could have argued. I could have tried to make her stay. A small, hot, angry part of me wanted to. I could feel the argument forming its sharp little teeth. You made me open it with you. Don't leave me with it. I killed the argument because I love her. Sometimes love is shutting up. Okay, I said. When she left, she hugged me in that way people do when they don't know what to do with their hands. I held her too tight, and she let me. If you read ahead, she said, her mouth near my ear, words warm and damp. Don't tell me. Don't you fucking dare tell me. I won't, I said. I'm in it then. I sat alone with the book. The city moved around my building, its dumb, hopeful day noise. Someone argued in the street, their voice going up and down like a rope. A van did that backing up whine that makes you think of a hospital monitor. A siren went by going nowhere near me. The world carried on insultingly friendly. I opened the book. This is where you'll hate me if you don't already. I didn't read ahead. Not yet. I went back. I reread the bits that hurt in a way I could stand because that felt like work that counted. I let it tell me the bad thing I said to a man I loved once. I let it tell me how my grandfather's breath smelled the day he died and how I laughed at the funeral at a bad joke because grief makes me ugly sometimes. I let it tell me that I like to sit in the shower on the tile floor sometimes and rest my head on my knees like a kid because it makes the day feel like it has a beginning and an end and not just a smear. I let it tell me that my favorite time to write is when other people are asleep and I can hear my neighborhood like a big animal breathing. It wrote me, and it wrote me until I was calm again. Calm the way you get after crying that stupid, clean calm that makes food taste like something. Then I went to the edge. The book waited like a dog, being very good about not chasing the stick until you throw it. It had that alert stillness that is not still at all. It said he thinks, and yes, I did. I thought like a man at a cliff thinking about leaning forward to see how far it goes. The thing is, we talk about spoilers like they ruin stories. That's not really it. Spoilers ask you to trust you can stand what you'll be told. To read ahead in a book that knows you is to decide you can carry the weight of your own future without dropping it on your foot. It's an arrogance and a cowardice at the same time. It's saying, I will know and I will still live. I closed the book. I put it on the top of my fridge because that's where I put things I don't trust myself with. Biscuits, cigarettes when I'm off them, a bottle of whiskey I tell myself is for guests. It sat there like a second moon. Days learned to separate again. I made food that required heat. I did dishes. I slept at night and woke without the feeling that something had been reading me from the corner. I went back to work. The keyboard felt like it's supposed to. A dumb tool. I wrote a paragraph that wasn't great, but wasn't rotten. My phone lit up with a picture from Libby of a lake with no caption. I didn't ask where. Good. Libby nameless. Then small things started happening. Not horror flick things. Prosaic things that are worse because you can't tell if you're being dramatic. The kettle began to click on half a second before I set my hand to it, as if my body and the book had started to share a fuse. The radio found the song I'd been humming. The bus came the second I stepped out, which never happens on my route. A text landed as I thought the sentence I wanted it to say. You can call that coincidence. I tried. It didn't feel like that. It felt like the book was leaning over my shoulder, finishing my sentence in the same breath. I dreamed of pages, not words. Blank pages. Pages that smelled like the inside of a post office. I dreamed I tore a page out and it cried out like an animal. I woke with my nails full of paper. There were tiny crescents of pulp under them, wet and gray. I checked the book on top of the fridge with a chair. I didn't touch it. I looked fast, like not looking, and there were no pages missing. There was a smear on the leather the size and shape of my palm. I told myself it was dust. I told myself lots of things. I saw a man on the bus reading a brown book. I stood up with such speed that the people around me moved away. It wasn't the book. It was a Bible wrapped in a cover someone's aunt had made. The man smiled at me, and I smiled back like the idiot whose face says I'm not all right. I went back to the market alone and found the woman again and gave her the kind of thank you for nothing you give people who didn't do anything wrong. I walked the street where the house was and saw a skip out front and wood where the door had been, and a man with a cigarette driving a wrecking machine that turned rooms into a dust you taste for a day. I told myself the book had already got out, or that it never was in, or that it was me all along. I'm talented at lies that sound sensible. Libby texted me a single word, better. I believed her because I wanted to and because I don't want to live in a world where that wasn't true. I stood in my kitchen one night with the light off because my flat looks kinder in the dark. The book was a square above me. My hand found the chair without looking. My body did the rest like a drunk with a favorite bottle. I took it down. It had my heat already. That's the grossest thing I'll tell you, and I've told you worse. It had kept the warmth from the last time I'd held it, as if no time had passed. I opened to the back. I don't know why. I think I wanted to cheat by going so far ahead, I'd see only nonsense. It's like trying to look at your life from a cliff so far away the houses are model homes. All that did was make the pages lunge to the present and then inch forward like a measuring tape slipping smooth in a carpenter's hand. There was a page where something heavy was coming. You know the shape of that page because you've lived it. The syntax shortens. The sentences go staccato. Detail piles like sandbags before a flood. The book wrote my hands now. The book wrote the exact skin squeak when I turned that page. The book wrote the taste. It wrote metal. It wrote fear. It wrote the next breath. It wrote the next knock. I shut it again with my fist in it to keep the place like a savage, and I laughed because it was so stupid, the thought that I could jam my body into the gears and make them skip teeth. Then the knock came. I hate when stories make the knocks monstrous. This was a human knock. The knuckles of it. The impatience. The getting the rhythm wrong because the person doesn't want to seem eager. I stood there with my book like a cliche. Then I put it down like a person because the knock had come from my hallway and the book had written it. I opened the door. It was a man with a clipboard. He was the kind who doesn't get drunk and cheat on his taxes and thinks people who do are lesser animals. He said my name in the tone of someone who has practiced. He told me he was here about an incident. He said words like welfare check and follow up and are you safe? I said, I am, and the book wrote, he lies and wants to be caught. I felt the lie leave my mouth like steam hitting cold air. The clipboard man's eyes didn't flicker, but the book saw something micro in him, a tiny hungry shift, and it wrote it. The writing cut him out like a stamp. The crease in his slacks, the eyebrow hair that grew longer than the rest, the neatly trimmed finger where he'd bitten just a little. Every detail was a tenderness and a cruelty. I nodded while he talked. I signed a paper without reading it. The part of me that watches me watched the book watch me, and I understood, for the second time, how a person can go mad slowly and convincingly. After he left, I sat down on the floor. I put the book in my lap, palms flat on it like I was warming myself. I thought about free will. I thought about grammars. I thought about how a sentence can contain a whole future if you pick the right verb. I thought about the stuff we say to children. You can be whatever you want. I thought about the other stuff we never say. That isn't true. I thought about my grandfather, how he liked mending, how he could take apart a clock on the table and lay its innards in a careful troop and put it back together, and it would run again and not even lose time. The book does not pretend to be God. That's the part that will be hard to hear if you need it to be. It doesn't punish. It doesn't reward. It doesn't care. It is a mouth that names. It is a hand that writes. It writes the smell of your skin after rain and the sound of your voice when you lie to a man with a clipboard. It writes the way your friend avoids grapes because of stems. It writes the way you set a book on top of a fridge because you think height can beat weakness, which is adorable. I picked it up again because there's a kind of bravery that is really a dare against yourself. I opened to where it had described the knock in my hand in the book and the laugh that wasn't real. It moved on. It wrote a message from Libby I hadn't received yet. The words were, "Can I come by?" Then it wrote the word sorry. Then it wrote a pause. Then it wrote the truth. She won't come. She will type and delete. She will stand at a window with her phone in her hand and look at a lake. She will imagine she throws the phone in. She will imagine that if she throws it, the book will not be able to find her anymore. She will not throw it. She will set it face down, and her chest will hurt as if a rubber band has been pulled up under her breastbone. She will breathe until the hurt shifts to a different place. I set the book down gently. I did not slam it. I did not tear a page. I stood up. I made tea. I watched the kettle not be magic. I stood at my window and watched 3 buses go by without me on them. I listened to the apartment next door and the couple who like to sing to each other when they clean. I heard the woman do the broom vocal, the brush, 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 and the man harmonize while he wiped the counter. I thought about writing something that wasn't about me. I thought about taking the book and walking to the river and putting it in and watching it drink. I put the book back on top of the fridge. My arms shook. I didn't know if I was weak or scared or hungry or all of it. I put the chair back. I sat down. I'm not going to lie to you. If I had read ahead, I would tell you. That's the worst part. The book has made me that honest with strangers because the cost of lying feels, now, like tearing skin. I haven't read ahead. I took the lines I've told you, and I stopped at the lip of the next sentence like a diver who has decided this cliff is high enough, and maybe there's a rock. The temptation has not left. It sits across from me, polite, hands folded, patient. It doesn't knock anymore. It doesn't need to. It knows my rhythm. It knows how long I can sleep without waking to think of it. It knows the sound my knees make when I stand from the couch, because the weather's got into them now that I'm not 20. It knows the way I bite the inside of my cheek when I hear a siren and think of friend. It knows my hunger and my smallness and the way my memory comes in fog and breaks in clearings. I give it nothing but my shape in the room. It writes that shape whether I agree or not. You want me to be brave, or you want me to confess? Those are the 2 audiences I can feel listening. The ones who want me to set the book on fire, and the ones who want me to tell you exactly what the next thing is. Both are asking for something I can't give without breaking something I may need later. Both want to be right about stories. What I can tell you is this. When you read yourself with that kind of attention, the world becomes unbearable and true. The city feels louder because it is singing your name. The light on the floor looks like a paragraph. The breeze on your neck feels like a page turning. People's faces are chapters you can only reread later, badly. You start to understand that everything is a sentence with a verb you can choose until you don't. That's not philosophy. That's not a slogan. That's just the taste of living when you put your tongue on the battery. My grandfather used to take a thing apart and then put the clean pieces on a towel. He'd say, "Don't lose the spring." He'd say, "This bit goes skitter." He'd say, "Don't breathe too hard near it. It'll go and we'll never find it." I think I have a spring in me like that. I think the book touches it when I read ahead. I think if I lose it, I won't put myself back together again, and I won't run. So I'm here. The book is there. Libby is not here because she is trying to be better far away from me. The man with the clipboard is practicing his next sentence in a mirror. The market woman scratches the place on her arm and sells a bag of McDonald's toys to a kid for £2 and remembers a cat for 1 second. The house near the gasworks is a pile slammed flat, so you can park a car on what used to be a sofa. The pages are the color of old teeth. My hands are not clean. My mouth tastes like iron when I think about certain days. The sentence waits. The next one always will. Unless I turn that page and carve those words into being, I'll never know. But that's just it. Am I prepared to become the author of my own story?